This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
To a great extent, the development of computer hardware illustrates the technological and scientific progress people have achieved during world history. This paper is aimed at discussing the definition of the term hardware, its history, current development, and prospects. It seems that the discussion of these questions can throw light on the evolution of information technologies and the main factors that influence this process. Overall, one can identify several important trends that profoundly affected the development of hardware, and one of them is the need to improve its design, functionality, and capacity. Secondly, it is important to remember about the increasing commercialization of these technologies. First of all, the term hardware can be defined as physical units of a computer that are supposed to perform the processing, input, storage, transfer, and output of information. Among these elements, one can distinguish processors, keyboards, hard disk drives, motherboards, graphics adapters, scanners, printers, and so forth. These units have to do separate tasks, and one cannot say that they are equally important, yet they are closely dependent on one another. Overall, this concept of hardware is used to describe the tangible components of a computing system. In contrast, the word software refers to intangible elements of a computing system that are used to manipulate the hardware. This is one of the distinctions that should be taken into consideration. On the whole, this term is critical for the understanding of information technologies and their functioning. The importance of hardware can hardly be underestimated because it ensures that every process is completed successfully. Furthermore, the physical units are important for the effective work of software applications and operational systems. Finally, these components are used to connect different computing systems. Scientists have long tried to create a machine that can process information or store it. For example, the famous mathematician Blaise Pascal was able to create a mechanical calculator in 1642. Other mathematicians made similar attempts, but it is very difficult to call these inventions computers because they consisted only of mechanical elements. More importantly, their functionality was very limited. One can say that the true development of computing systems began in the first half of the 20th century, and at that time, this hardware had to serve military needs. In particular, one should mention the model introduced by John von Neumann, who believed that computers had to include such elements as CPU, input and output devices, and memory storage. To a great extent, this model contributed to the future development of hardware. It should be noted that in the course of history, computer hardware gradually became smaller and more effective. For instance, the Colossus computer occupies an entire building floor, while modern computers can be smaller than a notebook. To a great extent, minimizing hardware has become one of the most important trends, and many designers and engineers consider this requirement. Moreover, improving hardware components led to the greater commercial use of computers or their components. Today, they can be regarded as mass consumer goods that are accessible to people of different incomes. This is one of the issues that should be taken into account. Currently, the development of hardware is based on several important principles. First of all, manufacturers attempt to make their devices efficient in terms of energy consumption, size, and compatibility with existing software solutions. These are the most important concerns of engineers and designers who have to work on various requirements when developing new products. To some degree, the improvement of CPUs, random access memory, RAM, and other devices reflects the development of existing software solutions that require the excellent performance of technologies. This is one of the most important trends that one can identify. Additionally, the physical components of a computer are adjusted to different devices that were not previously related to computing systems. For instance, random access memory can be easily incorporated into mobile phones. Apart from that, the physical components of the computer are improved in terms of their capacity and connectivity. For example, contemporary hard disk drives can store several terabytes of data. This capacity was hardly imaginable at least a decade ago when users had fewer opportunities. Moreover, a hard disk drive can be connected to a variety of devices, such as personal computers, mobile phones, and even TV sets. These are some of the issues that one can identify. Overall, it is possible to argue that computer hardware development continuously brings people new opportunities. At this point, it is very difficult to predict the future of hardware development because a single discovery or invention can significantly contribute to technological progress. Apart from that, it can make previous hardware completely obsolete. Moreover, it is very difficult to appreciate the value of an invention. For example, very few people could predict that the internet would turn the world into a global village. Similarly, the discovery of liquid crystals was not initially connected with computer hardware, but now they are widely used for the production of displays. One can make several conjectures about future trends. First of all, the researchers point out that the speed and efficiency of hardware tend to double every 2 years. This tendency was observed during the last 2 decades. This means that in the future, the functionality and performance of hardware will rise dramatically. Moreover, it is possible to say that the size of different hardware components will significantly diminish. Finally, the hardware, which is now believed to be innovative, may go out of date within 5 years. These are the main arguments that can be put forward. One can say that hardware development will offer users new opportunities. These examples suggest that in the course of its history, computer hardware has undergone significant transformation due to technological and scientific discoveries. Although it was used mostly for military purposes at the very beginning, the situation changed dramatically in the second half of the 20th century when computers began to serve commercial goals and became consumer goods. Moreover, it is very difficult to predict future changes that information technologies will undergo. Additionally, different elements of computer hardware will be improved in terms of functionality, performance, and design. Finally, different components of a computer can become obsolete very quickly. Overall, one can better understand technological progress and future trends by looking at the historical development of computer hardware. If you want to find more works like this essay on computer hardware, past, present, and future, head over to ivpanda.com. It has a collection of samples with thousands of submissions covering virtually all academic subjects.